Hello and welcome to this channel. My name is Dick van Oeveren, and in this third MPLS video I will demonstrate some more cool MPLS layer 3 VPN configurations on Comware devices. In the previous demonstration I've showed a layer 3 VPN with static routing, and now I'm going to show you how to set up dynamic routing with OSPF within a layer 3 VPN. I will also show you how to set up a common services VPN instance that is shared with the customer VPN instances. In other words, I want to be able to access a common service VPN instance, but customer VPNs should still not be able to communicate with each other. The diagram will hopefully clear up everything. I made some minor changes to the IP addressing scheme because obviously when you're using a common services VPN instance, you cannot have any overlapping IP addresses anymore. All VPN instances now have unique IP addresses, so they can be used in the setup that I will be demonstrating. On both label edge routers, I will be creating a OSPF routing process for each VPN instance, and I will assign the advertised networks to those processes. This will include creating loopback interfaces that are bound to each VPN instance, and these loopback interfaces will be used to represent the router ID for that OSPF process. And then the next step is to simply import the routing process in the address family in BGP rather than importing the direct routes. As for the common shared services VPN instances, the setup is even simpler. It's just a matter of creating the VPN instance on the label edge router on PE1, and then set the VPN target to both VPN instances, to both customer VPN instances, and then exporting that routing information and assign the interface and loopback to the common shared VPN instance. To prove that the route linking is working, I will also configure a services router with OSPF. That's the one here on the top of the diagram, on top here, and assign a network prefix to the OSPF process that should be advertised throughout the layer 3 VPNs. This means that when configuration is finished, I should be able to reach IP address 11101, which will be the loopback interface of the services router from CE3 and CE4. Let's first check out the configuration that is based on the previous video demonstration. The only thing that we've changed here are the IP addresses of the interfaces that are facing the CEs. So let me show you the one of PE1, and you can see here that the interface that is facing CE1 hasn't changed, but the one facing CE3 has changed to 3.1, and on the bottom label edge router I have changed the IP addressing of the interface that is facing CE4 to 172.16.4.1. So other than that, the setup is the same, and also for this demonstration we don't have to touch the label switch routers, so they're just pushing and popping labels. The main configuration will take place on the top label edge router, and there are some basic OSPF configurations on the CEs and the bottom label edge router. Let's start with PE1. First, what we'll do is we'll configure the loopback interfaces for both customer VPNs so that we can use them for the OSPF routing processes. So let's create the loopback one and bind it to the VPN instance, and then give it an IP address. That's the one that's shown in the diagram, so that will be 1.1.10.2. And we'll do the same for the customer B. Okay, and now let's create the OSPF routing process for both customer VPNs. So that will be OSPF create process 2, which is for VPN instance customer A, and I'm using router ID 1110.2. Okay. So we have to tell the process that it should be capable of handling VPN instances. So what we do first is set the VPN instance capability, and then we just add the networks. 16.1.0 is for customer A. And that's in for the OSPF process for customer A. And then we create another one for VPN instance customer B with router ID 1120.2. Set the VPN instance capability and add the networks. 16.3.0. Now we have to do a similar setup on PE2, and let me guide you through that configuration as well. Interface loopback 10, IP binding customer A. And this one is for customer B. And create the OSPF processes. From 2.16. This would be 2. And then create the other OSPF process for customer B. On this one is 4.0. Okay. Now the next step is to make a small change to the BGP configuration. In a previous video I imported the direct routes. Now we are changing this to importing the OSPF routes. We configure this on both the label edge routers, and we will be importing the relevant OSPF processes that will include the direct OSPF routes. Reason for adding this option is that this will allow the import of the OSPF networks that are learned through the direct routes. So let's go and start with the top label edge router. Let's go to the BGP context, and let's take customer A VPN first. Let me display this so that you can see the import route direct, and let's remove that one. Address family IPv4 unicast, undo import route direct, and what we're going to do now is import route OSPF process 2, and we allow the direct routes. And we do the same for customer B. Direct, and then import route OSPF 3, allow direct. And we do the same thing on the bottom label edge router. Import route direct. And then import route OSPF 3, allow direct. Okay. And then finally we have to set up OSPF routing on the CEs. This is really very straightforward. I will show you the OSPF configuration of one of the CEs, and I will skip showing you the configuration of the other ones because it's, well, basically the same. So let me go to CE1 and configure some IP addresses. 224. Let me just ping the other side. So this is the label edge router. And then do interface loopback 0. Configure a router ID. And then configure OSPF. One dot 0. So, and that's it. As you can see, there's not much MPLS configuration involved here. Most of it is routing. Now let's check if everything is working. Let's check out the routing tables first on the top label edge router. So that would be display IP routing VPN instance, customer A. So what we can see here is that the label edge router has learned the routes through BGP here. So these are the networks, the prefixes from CE2 and the other side. And so now when we check the routing table on CE1, you see that you will find that the routes to PE2 and CE3 are not there, or CE2 are not there. The reason for this is that PE1 has learned the routes through BGP, and these routes are not advertised by the OSPF process for that VPN instance. So what we have to do is we have to import the learned BGP routes in the OSPF process for that VPN instance. So let's do that. Let's go to the OSPF process and import the BGP route, and what we have to do is we have to allow iBGP because we're using a single autonomous system, and we have to do the same for OSPF process 3. There you go, and let's do that on the bottom label edge router as well. For both processes. Now let's check again. And you can see that the routes are learned now. So 1110.3 and 1110.4 is learned, and also for customer A, 172.16.2 network is learned through OSPF. So what I can do now is when I ping the CE2 loopback interface, so that would be 1110.4, you can see I can reach CE2. And of course, because the VPN instances are still separated, I cannot reach any of the IP addresses that are in the other customer VPN instance. So for example, 20.1, for example, or 20.4, which is the loopback interface of CE4. I cannot reach that. Okay, so now let's take it a step further. I want to have a shared service VPN instance that is reachable by the customer VPN instances, but I still want to maintain the separation between the customer VPN instances. So again, achieving this is pretty straightforward. And what we're going to do is we're going to first create a services VPN instance on the label edge router 1 on PE1, create a loopback interface, assigning it to the VPN instance, and then create another OSPF process for the shared service. So it's very similar to what we've done earlier in the demonstration. So IPVPN instance services. I'm setting a route distinguisher and a VPN target, and I'm going to create a loopback interface, bind that to the VPN, and give it an IP address. Let's say 2. And what I also have is I have another interface that is facing the services router, which will be gigabit interface 5.0. I'm going to bind that to the VPN instance as well. And I'm going to give it an IP address, 16.100. That would be 1. And I will be creating another OSPF process for the services VPN instance with router ID 100.2. Setting the VPN instance capability to simple. Importing the BGP routes. And creating the area with the network prefixes 100.2, 16.100.0, 55. So what we have to do now is to allow the export of the services routes into the customer VPN instances. This is done in the services instance by exporting and importing the services routes to the customer VPN instance route distinguishers. So I'm going to go to the VPN instance services again, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a VPN target, 10.1 and 21. So I'm exporting those routes into the customer VPNs. And then the final step is to import the OSPF process for the services into the BGP address family for the services VPN instance. So going into the BGP context and then create the services VPN instance address family IPv4 and then import OSPF for allowing the direct routes. I've already configured the services router, so let me quickly show you the OSPF configuration. Display this. You can see here I've got my loopback and my 172.16.100 address advertising into the OSPF network. So that's a full configuration. So let's see what the routing tables tell us. We'll take the services router first. So let me do a display IP routes. You can see a lot of routes here. So what we can see from the services router, we can see all the networks from the different customer VPN instances. So we can see all the loopback interfaces, and we can also see all the customer networks here. So the 172.16, 1, 2, 3, and 4 networks. Now let's take a routing table from a customer edge router. So for example, CE4, which is customer B. And let's show the routing table here. And what you can see here that all the networks are visible except the networks from customer A. So you can only see the 1120 networks here and the 172.16.3 and obviously 4 networks which are directly connected. So what I can do here is I can ping, for example, to the services loopback interface, which will be 100.1. So that's the loopback in the services, in the services VPN instance, but I cannot ping to any of the IP addresses in the other VPN instances. So that's, and let me take 4 as well, which is CE2. It's not working. So So what I've showed you in this video is a more advanced setup of an MPLS network. However, there was not a lot of MPLS configuration involved here. Most of it had to do with the configuration of VPN instances and OSPF. So this concludes the MPLS Layer 3 Extended Edition demonstration video. Keep on the watch for more MPLS demos. If you have any comments or feedback, please let us know, and thanks for watching.